Just join in. Catch you, Liza. Man, my words today, I took a while.
Elemental brew doctor. Get the kombucha, man.
What's on the drink docket for today?
Today's podcast brought to you by Organic.
Sparkling hot tea.
Today's drink brought to you by Organic Kombucha by Brew Doctor. Tasty and fizzy.
Ooh,
Ooh,
tasty
got it.
and fizzy.
Pineapple Paradise is what we're working with. Passion fruit, green tea. Where's it from? Portland, Oregon.
Hey!
Who would have
Whoa.
guessed?
Oh.
Who would have guessed?
So serendipitous.
It was
Had no
meant to
idea.
be. It was meant to
Yeah.
be. All right. Well, Jimmie, welcome to the pod.
Yeah.
Glad to be here.
Mm.
Excited.
Yeah.
It's
First
good.
guest ever.
Yeah. First guest.
You guys wanted to set the bar low before we raise it up?
No,
Yeah.
not at all. This is, don't even know where to begin.
Well, you know this, Jimmie. Like most things on this podcast, there was no rhyme, reason, or strategy to it. It just happened, and that's why we know it's right.
Mhm.
Love it.
Yeah.
Open
Organic.
book.
Open book, man. You want to share with us a story, actually. You could start off there. You had
Yeah.
something.
Really crazy kind of human experiment I walked into today. Went to get my wife's car, her windows tinted because it's very hot here. And I realized that I'm the only one driving around Central Texas without front windows that are tinted. So I'm like, should probably do this at the end of the summer.
Mm.
So go in, take it to the tent place, hanging outside. Guy was great, checked me in. Another lady comes up behind me. She's got one of those RVs that are like the all-in-one travel RV, right? That you like sleep in and do everything right. She's frustrated. She's got a bag and she's going in, she's talking. Guy's working on my window, no big deal. Then I hear just like screaming, right? I'm like, and it's that point where you're like, do I get involved or not, right? Like we've been in those situations before
Yeah.
where you're like, it's a Friday. Like, should I do something? Should I not? Like, is this the thing that I stay out of, I avoid? And I'm like, something prompts me, Jimmie, just walk in there. And I go in there and the lady's just like screaming. She's so upset. She paid $4,000. They were supposed to do like shatterproof film or something on her glass because she goes out and camps. People break into it. She didn't want the window to shatter. She's like, after a while, they give up. Well, they wired the cameras wrong or something like that. And she's like, you know, just so attached to this $4,000 that she spent. The work was done wrong.
Mm.
And the guy who's working the front, customer service, young guy, he's just so laissez-faire. He's just like, yeah, I know, no, yeah, you know. She's like, $4,000, you did everything. And he's like, okay, cool. Like, he's not matching her at all, right? He's so below where she's at.
Yeah.
And she just wanted him to elevate, like, to make it seem like it was important to him. And he was just like, flatline, right?
Mm.
So I'm looking at this dynamic and I'm just sitting there and I go, can I just say something here? And I was like, seems like there's a resolution to this. She's like, are you going to be a mediator? And I was like, sure.
Yeah.
I have no
That's what I
formal-
came in here for.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do that.
Sure. I'm just trying to get my own service too. And so I'm like, I think this is what he's saying. I think this is what she's saying. All she wanted at the end was a receipt of what she had signed before for the work, essentially. And he was trying to explain to her, hey, we're going to do all these things to fix it. But she's like ready to just take her car somewhere else. But she wants the proof of like what they were going to commit to warranty and everything. But the noise was just so loud and they're just on different wavelengths up and down across the board.
Two ships passing in the night.
Ooh. Yeah. It was like they were not communicating. So I was sitting there going, how many times are we put in these situations where you're like, do I jump in? Do I not? And then once I jumped in, I was like, I really don't know how this is going to end. Right? Like, I thought she might elevate and call the cops or something,
Yeah.
you know?
Mm-hmm.
But I wondered if you guys have been in situations like that. Like, I haven't been in a long time.
Man,
Or do you jump in? Like, are you the guy that's going to jump in and go, I think I can probably help here?
I think the only things I've ever jumped in my life were whenever someone's getting beat up and it's not going well for them.
Interesting.
Verbally, not a lot. The immediate thought that usually comes in my brain after I hear something like that is I've got to give them the chance to do whatever, have their resolution or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And can obfuscate names, and you guys will know who I'm talking about probably, but podcast will be anonymous enough. I work with some people where they love each other, and they have some debates sometimes that I hear the conversation and I'm like, man, that's tough. Oh, a little harsh. That's a little rough. And I think about mediating or like intervening, and I'm like, oh, they're both strong. Like, they'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And they do.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a right or wrong approach. I think it's, has God called you? Have you been put there in that moment? Like, you have to decide right then. It's like, was I put here because I'm supposed to do this? Or is this just like a warning to me for, hey, don't blow up and do this, because then you're going to make someone else feel like you feel right now? Or like, there's multiple stories I feel from that. But to answer your question, not a lot of that happens around me so far.
I've never done it randomly, like with two parties that I don't know. I do it plenty with parties that I do know. I do it with, I'm married. My wife gets mad at people for things. I jump in, mediate. And what's interesting about the problem to me is the miscommunication between the two people and not listening to each other and not communicating well. I am blessed with a skill set where I can take complex situations and narrow them down to practical steps that need to be hit to get through them. It's probably a mix of the fact that I write a lot and read a lot, but I think people miscommunicate all the time. And I emphasize miscommunicate on purpose, because people say miscommunicate and it just kind of flies by, but they're missing each other.
Yeah.
That's the problem, is they're missing each other.
Exactly.
And they're one wants one thing, another wants a different thing, or one's not able to express what they want is mostly what happens, is one's not able to express what they want efficiently.
Yeah.
And when they can't do that, the other people respond inappropriately and it becomes a problem. So being able to listen to somebody and express what's going on with them, what they desire, what their problem is, concisely, that's a skill set that if you can do it, you probably should be a mediator. The fact that you were able to get to the solution that you said you got to, a lot of people can't get to that.
Well, it's interesting. The thing that she said to me was, she got her receipt and she was leaving. She's calling an Uber because she's leaving her car there, or van there to get worked on. And she's like, thank you for not thinking that I was crazy.
Yeah.
And I was like, why was that the assumed position, right? That she thought, maybe because she was a woman and she's angry, she's elevating, but it's like, men raise their voice. It's like, well, he's probably pissed about something, right?
Mm-hmm.
If it's a woman, it just seems like so much more drastic.
Okay,
right?
Karen.
Exactly.
There's memes about it. There it is.
Exactly. Yeah. And so in that moment, I was just like, there's something she's not getting that she wants or clearly feels like she deserves.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's how I communicated to the guy. But I could tell that she wanted him to care as much as she did. And he was like, look, lady, like I just take cash and I book the appointments up front. Like that's my job. You know?
Mm-hmm.
He's like, I'm in a box, right? Like,
Yep.
don't make me be outside of the box right now.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, two ships passing in the night. They couldn't have been on further wavelengths. But she wanted to be seen and heard, which I think he was doing. But the way that he was so mellow and so disarmed by it, it almost seemed like he was discarding her feelings, right? And that made her more angry and elevated.
You know where this happens in the opposite direction? That's just an interesting thought that I had. Back in high school, you have a girl that really, really likes you, and you play it so cool, and you don't care at all, and it makes her like you more. In this scenario, it's something like that. It's a compounding effect where when someone is showing emotion towards you and you give them nothing, the thing they want to do is show more of that emotion, I think. That's probably a very psychological human principle that could be tested. I don't know if that's true or not, but it seems possible, viable. What do you think?
Well, we had just asked this, but like, how many times do you shoot your shot before you go, I'm done with it?
I don't know if there's a right answer to that question. Theoretically, there's no right answer. Practically, as a person, I do it way too many times. For sure. But other people give up right away, I think. What do you think?
I feel like I've spent most of my hit. See, shot my shot, messed up. I'm gonna go again. Spent most of my life banging my head against a brick wall. I still do it.
Yeah.
Just keep on. I believe there's something on the other side of that wall that I'm supposed to get to, and so until something else pops into my lap or shows up that's like, hey, here's a drill or here's a shovel or a pickaxe, like, keep doing that.
So you don't believe in failing fast? Like, if you fail fast, because most people say fail fast, right?
Oh, yeah.
Fail quickly so you can pivot and then figure it out. But you're like, no. I know that there's something on the other side of this that's there for me.
Yes.
And you're going to keep grinding at it.
Well, I see it as like every time I don't get across, it's a failure. Like if my goal is to break down the wall and I'm smacking my head against it, every time I smack my head, it's a failure. And I'm just building up evidence that it's not working.
We've talked about that before too, I think, where we've talked about how you analyze the data of your failures. And if you fail over and over again, if you're reading it like a data scientist, the data says you should stop. But there's also an element of death that occurs when you quit. There's an intellectual capital that disappears, or a spiritual capital, emotional capital, whatever it is that disappears, that's gone forever from the world. If I have an idea for a business and I know it's a good idea and it's going to help the world, and I try over and over and over again and I can't get money or I can't get the legal approval or whatever, and I just give it up, that idea may never exist. And if that idea never exists, the world never gets to benefit from it. And that is a failure. You gotta push through and unlock the capital that's inside of you. You got to.
So I do believe in failing fast, but do it often and in rapid succession. Like,
yeah.
But
there's still a level of conviction that you have that thought came from, right? That says there's got to be a way for this to be manifest, for me to see this through, right? To be a part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's pivots in there for sure. If I'm going to keep beating the same metaphor, like maybe I'll try the back of my head one day. Maybe I'll try the top. Maybe it's battering ram. Maybe it's small taps. Like, yeah, you got to, if a process on its own clearly shows it's not working, change that. But don't throw the whole entire thing away. Like, I can't throw the whole idea away or like the whole goal away. Just tactics, strategy, implementation.
What's the one idea that you had that failed that you wish would have come to fruition? That would have been the one.
Conservancy is a great one here. You want to talk about conservancy?
For sure. Conservant Seed taglined NFTs for ecological good.
Mm-hmm.
We were coming up with a platform to give people NFTs for their, what am I trying to say? Give people NFTs for their volunteer work, essentially. And or create NFTs from volunteer work, and then people would buy those NFTs, which would then fund the nonprofit work that they've done. And it's an awesome idea. I think it's pretty simple in concept. I mean, you have 50 people in India that are cleaning up the streets of India,
planting trees or something.
Planting trees. There's becoming all these little records of them, these moments like NBA Top Shots.
Proof of work.
Proof of
there's
work.
like video camera of those trees being planted.
And then somebody here in America is like, I need to get some credits from my company, I need a tax write-off, whatever it is. They're going to go buy those NFTs. They get those moments, and then the people in India get the money, and a majority of the work that's generally done by administration and management and a nonprofit is just being a more automated exchange between those two places. And the idea is still there, but
that's the key.
Completely put it down, basically, because we did bang our head a couple times and we were like, it's a little too painful right now. We
don't know where to go.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted you to hit on, was I think where you're going, and it's very, very important to analyze, is let's say you run a startup and your startup goes for 3 years and it's just not making it, and it's not catching the traction it needs to take. Worldly wisdom tells you to shut it down and move on to the next project, which I think is probably what you're talking about. You fail fast. Is it better to go through one a year or whatever and pump them out? Those pivots are good. It's what we did with Conservant Seed. And Conservant Seed has a great mission. It is very much a global product that would have worked had NFTs maintained the momentum that they had.
Sure.
Somebody would have picked it up and been like, we're about that. And that will come back at some point. Don't know when or where, why or how. The important thing is that we've planted that seed, that mental seed, and we haven't killed it yet. It's still there. And so anytime something pops up, we'll bring that to mind and execute on it. Here's a different example. Somebody was telling me about envisioning what you want for the future and creating that. And there's two ways people go about this, one that's right and one that I think is wrong. You envision exactly what you want, and then you sit down the next day and you write out goal after goal after goal after goal, how you're going to get there. And let's say your thing is, I want to make time for a vacation in the Barbados. I want to make enough money and have enough time to go on vacation in the Barbados. Okay, and you set off all these goals to do that. And when you do that, you stop focusing on all of the external things that can come to you to get you there. You're just focused on your goal. So let's say you get a letter from Uncle Dylan, who lives in the Barbados. That's like, hey, here's some tickets. I want you to come visit me. But you're so busy focused on your goals that you're like, I don't have time for this letter. I'm going to throw that out. That is the wrong way to go about things. The right way is you envision that thing, you plant that seed, and you plant a bunch of them, and then you just wait to see how God unfolds it for you, right? You wait for that letter to arrive, and you're so open to the world around you that you open every letter you get. You open every email you get. You look for the sake of looking, because you never know when an opportunity is going to come to you randomly for one of those seeds that you have planted. So when we say fail and put it to bed, I don't mean fail, close up the startup, put it to bed, never think about the idea again. That's the waste of the human capital. If you maintain that seed, it'll come back.
Yeah.
It will. It has to.
It's so good. I often talk, a lot of startup stuff, as you guys know, and different businesses, right? And so the question is always like, how do you protect your intellectual property? And met a guy, he's executive coach, super smart, works with athletes, executives, CEOs. And him and I started working together, and he said, hey, Jimmie, my entire goal when I started this was to never protect anything that we develop. And I was like, what? And I'm like, that makes no sense, because you're building curriculum. You know what I mean? Like, you have this ideology of things that you've developed and now you're teaching other people that they're grasping onto. Like, you're not going to protect those things. And he's like, no, it's better shared being out there. So if there's a way that I can share it with you and then you can run with it, or we can collaborate in a way, like that may grow it in a different way that I'd never envisioned. So that's probably kind of what you're talking about, right?
Yes.
Like it's not that we put it down and you just close up shop. You say, hey, it's still there. I'm still willing to share the idea because somebody else may go, oh, let me pour water on that, right?
Exactly right.
Into something else.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And people do get so protective of their idea, and when it fails, they're still protective of it, and they just bury it with them. I'll take it to the grave with me.
Ooh.
That's silly. That
Just
intellectual
holding on to
capital's dead
Dead
forever.
seeds.
Just carrying around carnage, huh?
Yeah.
Wow.
Mhm.
Strong.
Curious, how the guy you mentioned, where does the money come from? Revenue come from then? If you're giving away intellectual capital, like where does the...
He just really feels like their principles and how they implement things are just strong enough that people, once they get a hold of it and they understand it, he talks about, like Keegan and Leahy did in their book, this adaptive mindset. Once you start thinking, that metacognition piece, right? Thinking about the way that you think, once you get people into that realm, they tend to see value immediately. Right?
Yeah.
If you give them just a prescription and you say, hey, do these 5 things, right? And if you do these 5 things, you'll be successful at business. You'll be a great writer. You'll be a great director, actor, whatever it may be, right, that they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
That never works, right? Because there's no belief, there's no conviction like we were talking about before, to where when you hit a roadblock or there's a wall, then you go, oh, yeah, that says clearly don't pass, right? I turn around and I just go back.
Yep.
Or you put it to bed, right? Versus, hey, let's keep working at this thing and try to overcome that. And so I think he truly believes that what they're doing is dynamic enough that they just want to share it. When people get a hold of it, they're excited about it, and then they want to talk about it and share it.
Okay. Right.
I tested it with him because, like, we've collaborated on a few different things now.
Yeah.
And, I do consulting work as well. And I brought him into another deal, and he was just like, yeah, that's great. This is great. Let's do it. Let's figure out how to combine our ideas and thoughts. And then, we finished this kind of brainstorming session. I was leaving his office when I was up in Portland a couple of weeks ago. And he goes, hey, we need to write a book together. And I'm like, fear sets in, right? Because he's already published like 3 books,
Heck yeah.
doing different things. And I'm going, whoa, we're 2 ships in the night, man. We're not on the same wavelength right now. He thinks maybe I'm at a higher level. I'm working on it, but it was just an interesting thing for him to turn back and say, look, let's collaborate. But he truly doesn't care about protecting anything that he develops.
I could not agree with his philosophy more. It feeds right into a life philosophy that I have that we've talked about in earlier episodes, which is build your community up and your community will build you up. There's 2 mindsets you can have, the scarcity mindset and the abundance mindset. And the abundance mindset says the more I give to Jimmie, the more Jimmie can give to Dylan, the more Dylan can give back to me, the more I can give to Jimmie. And the whole community just ends up building up together into one big thing. Versus the scarcity mindset, which is like, I can't let Dylan have this. I can't let Jimmie have this. They can't see. And then you guys are like, well, Braden's doing that. I'm going to do that with mine.
Yeah.
And
what you got over there? Oh, don't worry about what I got.
Yeah. There's never any complex interaction between it. And you give away that IP for free. That's what happens. You're building your community up and you're equipping them, and they will build you up. It absolutely will happen 100% of the time.
So good. There's so many. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Just this whole bit we're on right now is very counter to what I was taught, at least in the little bit of business education I've gotten, where they were taught, a lot of people were like, you don't necessarily sign a prenup whenever you go on your first date with your wife, but you get it done before you guys get together. And they were like, in business, you should get the NDA done on the first date. And I was like,
yeah.
I was like, but why? I don't even know them. I don't know anything about them. Like, I could be the idiot for sure that just wants to just tell you my idea. And well, I can't have a conversation with you for 45 minutes to an hour and like it doesn't go good or it does go great, like we can start to talk more, but I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Or I'm just like, this is kind of gross. Like I have to legally bind this one conversation.
I was like that for the first 10, 15 years in corporate business, right? It was like NDA, I have ideas, we've got a company, we're already down the road on something, you know, make sure you sign this. Everybody's kind of posturing and positioning on, you know, what are they actually bringing? You're questioning what's their value, you know?
Yep.
You start dicing all these things up in your head, right? Yeah. And I remember telling my wife one night, I was like, look, I just don't even care. Like, I just want to share it. And she was even like, well, how's that going to work out for you? Like, how are you protected? And I'm like, I'm really not. But I don't think I could do it on my own anyway, right? Yeah. So I'd rather share it with people and people go, well, that's, I think something I can, you know, if you can take it to first base, I think I can take it to second base, right? Or then somebody else can pick it up or they join and then they go. And the most successful ventures I've been in, there's multiple hands, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. People that have different ideas and different thoughts and perspectives. And now you've got something like you said, that community feel, right? Where people are pouring into you, you're receiving different ideas and thoughts, you're open, you're willing to be vulnerable and transparent with your ideas or your thoughts, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe even your own brand, right?
Mm-hmm.
To be elevated, you know, with other people. So.
Yeah. Oh man, the NDA process gets me so much. And I don't send them to anybody, but I sign plenty of them.
Yeah.
And it's the worst. It automatically implies there's a lack of trust going into the relationship. In my experience, almost nobody cares about your idea as much as you do. And no matter where you put it out and how much you put it out, it is very, very, very unlikely that anybody's going to execute on it. And I know they tell, everybody kind of points back to the story of Zuck and the Winklevoss twins. Personally, I think a lot of that is dramatized.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what that word is. I don't think anybody knows the real story, but I think there's a high probability that a lot less was stolen there than what's thought or believed. And I just don't think people steal that much. And if they do, it's the best test as to whether or not you should work with them moving forward. You should never, abundance mindset starts with the amount of ideas. You're never going to have just one idea. Have you guys ever had have y'all just had one idea in your life that's going to make you money and you've never had another one ever?
No idea.
I mean,
to be determined.
Many.
Yeah, many ideas, right? Everybody has many, many, many ideas. And yeah, it will suck the day that one gets taken. And one will get taken. I mean, if you just walk in with that expectation, you know one's going to get taken and somebody's going to run with it. And they're going to get away, but now you know exactly who not to trust. You know exactly who not to take with the others. And you inherently build a community around you of people who want to build you up just as much as you want to build them up.
So it's like you can spend your time trying to protect your idea and inevitably stave off any sort of growth. Or if you pursue the growth, a couple things may get chopped up or get lost along the way, but
you're going to grow.
You spend more time growing versus hiding.
You
or
have no time to worry about it. It's a Chinese handcuff. Do the opposite. Do the opposite of what makes sense.
That's so funny. You know, I'm kind of in the position with many of the things that I have going on where, you know, I used to always want to own it, stamp it. It's my idea. It's my brand and everything. And now I'm like, I just want to be a part of something cool.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. You guys have a crazy uncle?
Yes.
I got a crazy uncle.
Certified, yeah.
And I'm gonna certified. He's not certified. I'm gonna give him a shout out here because I'm sure he watches this. Uncle Bill. He knows he's my crazy uncle. Everybody knows crazy Uncle Bill. Uncle Bill taught me one rule that was really, really awesome, which was, he said, the more power you give away, the more power you have. That's the one thing. And I never really understood how it applied until I started finding myself on boards or in influential positions with different funds, consulting positions, whatever. And you know what I do when I draft something up? I put someone else's name on it. Why does it matter? Why does it matter? And you know what it does? It makes more people come to me for work. It makes more people come to me for ideas. It gives me more opportunities to speak into people's lives. Like, whenever you take your name off of it and you purposely put someone else's name on it, you are becoming a center of influence and almost a coach for that person. Who cares if you're known? Nobody cares.
You just hit the nail on the head, right? This is what my buddy says. He's like, the best coaches are invisible, right? And so, you think of this idea of like the greatest people at whatever they're great at, right? Whether it's an engineer, an athlete, or whatever. There's always somebody behind them, right? That either mentored them, helped them with, developing their skills or tools or whatever. But the best coaches are invisible. And we're actually in a culture right now where everybody wants to be visible, right? My kids are in the sports world, so every trainer is posting, I'm the best trainer, right? Because I have these guys. And they put their names up and everything, right? But really the best coaches are invisible. And I did this study, like, Steph Curry has a shooting coach. Most people don't even know who that is. His name's Q.
That's cool.
Right? His name's Q. You'll
that's
see,
like anonymously.
Yeah, that's
like,
a
I want to be
very
anonymous.
anonymous name.
He went to University of Arizona with Steve Kerr.
Cool.
Right? Was there. Ends up he's the Sherpa for Steph Curry. Everybody's like, he's the greatest shooter of all time. He's got a shooting coach. Right?
Yeah.
Not many people know that. Now, if you go look it up, you'll see, there's articles and stuff about him, and you'll hear the philosophy that he has with Steph. But he would prefer to be invisible. Let Steph have all the shine.
Yeah.
Right? I know that I train him. I know the work that we do, the relationship we have, the trust, right?
Yeah.
And Steph will tell you, like, yeah, I trust this guy, and unequivocally I'm off or I'm out of rhythm or whatever. I go to Q. We talk about it. We work on it. But the best of the best all have coaches. And the best coaches are pretty invisible, right?
It's another Chinese handcuff. You want to succeed? Help other people become more visible. Make other people more visible around you. Again, build your community up. When you build other people up and make them more visible, you might go into the shadow, but it's the more successful and more influence you have as you do. Take it political. How many of you guys, let's get real conspiracy theorists real fast. How many of you guys think politicians actually control what's going on? Or are there people behind them pulling strings?
Oh, I think there's huge teams of people that understand policy. You said option 2?
Yeah.
I'm with you as well.
Yeah.
I'm 100% on option 2. Yeah, I want the smartest people in the room around me.
Yeah.
I may be a good orator, the voice of it, but, I need subject matter experts everywhere to be feeding me what I'm good with. I mean, go ahead.
They call our president CEO, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I know CEOs, yes, they're the visionary, but at the same time, they're getting all the reports from their CFO, their COO, their CTO, whoever who's actually on the ground with then the VPs and blah, 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 like that hierarchy. Like, yes, all this information is trickling up. People are disseminating it, and then they're feeding it into the officer who then delivers the vision for it. And yeah, so I think it's impossible to think that the politicians make the decisions. I mean, they spin it a certain way, but it's like,
who has the influence? Who has the control?
Yeah, the data that's coming in is based on what everyone else gave them. So,
Well, and I mean, I was going to reference something, but Braden probably would say, like, yes, I'm the one. But I'm like, who reads a 200-page bill, right? Like, he would, because that's what you do. You're good at.
True.
But
glad there's someone here.
Most politicians are not doing that, right? They're getting the Cliff Notes version of what are the important causes? What did I run on, right? What
and somebody else is writing their speech and putting their name on it. Yeah. Exactly right. So the more power you give away, the more power you have.
Love it.
Powerful, powerful rule.
Think of waterfalls.
Interesting.
Like, the more water that flows out of a waterfall, like, technically the bigger, the louder, the stronger the waterfall is. Because in order to pour out something, like, there has to be something coming in. So if you practice the pour out, it's electricity. If there is I actually don't know how electricity knows. I don't know enough about electricity to explain it, but if there is a draw, it's because something needs so much power it needs to push so much power out.
Yeah.
And it creates whatever that effect is.
It's like a black hole vacuum the voltage between things.
Yeah. I need a Brad here to explain this.
Our bodies, think about food, right? What we put in allows us to put out what we put in, right? You put garbage in, you don't have very much to put out in terms of physical exertion and all those things.
I wonder if this applies in some way. I had a conversation with somebody who watched one of our previous pods on fruit. Your fruit. Remember we talked about how the tree doesn't eat its own fruit? And they commented and they said, I really empathize with that. I feel like I am absorbing a lot of darkness to be the light with people around me, but I have no way to recharge my fruit. There's got to be a voltage, I'm going to call it a voltage or a capacitance, if you will, a black hole of need for power and a source of power that creates the electric transfer between them. The constant giving of yourself as fruit that creates a black hole that brings fruit back to you from somebody else. There's something about this where the more you give, you create a gravity around you that people want to give back to you in some form or fashion. People want to bring back to you.
You know, it's interesting that you say that because I think people that give a lot, they actually have the hardest times receiving.
Yeah, they do.
Right. And so it'd be really interesting to study how much of that, what's the capacity of pour out that puts you over the edge to where you can't actually receive the things that you need to really restore you or fill you up to put it back out.
Yeah.
Right?
Why are you not receiving it? Why are you not? Maybe it's people so focused. It's like our uncle sends you tickets to Barbados. Maybe people are so focused on giving out and making sure that they're giving out that they miss when things come back to them. They don't even pay attention to it. They don't see it.
Are we in an overly generous society?
No, we're not. No, we're not.
I'm guilty. I'm not generous with compliments, with the amount of words I put out, with very little.
Yeah.
I like to teach people things I know. It's probably where I pour out the most. But I think these Fridays here are where I talk the most throughout my whole week.
Yeah, but I think you're minimizing your impact because the one thing that I know about you is that you're very present when you're with you. And so I think that accounts for a lot, right? There's people that you talk to and you're like, they were never really here, right? Like, yeah, we had a conversation, but it was like, their phone, they're doing this, they're everywhere. And then there's people you're like locked in and you're like, man, that was like really good connection. It could have been 2 minutes, right? But I felt like I really saw the person I was locked in. We went to breakfast the other day, right?
Yeah.
We had a great time. We sat right next to each other and I left there and I was like, Dylan's just good people, man. Like this guy is just a solid dude, And I've been doing a lot of study on Dale Kahneman. He wrote this book, Thinking Fast and Slow, talks about our bias and everything. And system one is like our impulsive nature, right? It tends to be the things that are, it's effortless, but we tend to say the wrong things. Those are our unconscious, biases that come to play in real life. Those are the things that just manifest out of that. System two takes reservation, takes conscious cognitive thought, right? It takes effort to really unpack. And I think you're one of those people that operate heavily in system two. Doesn't mean you're not generous. I think you're very particular about the words that you share, right? Yeah. And so when the words come across, there's actually probably more value in it. People may not, we're talking about sending and receiving, right? Two ships in the night. They may not get the signal, but if they did, it would be like, oh, that's gold. Because those people, right? They just drop a nugget or two on you, and you're like, whoa. You talk to other people for an hour, you're like, yeah, it was good to see you, and you leave there, and you're like, I don't even know what I got from that.
What just happened? Yeah.
That's funny you say that because we had somebody comment on Dylan was trying to find a way through our YouTubes I had interpreted that he was trying to find a way through our YouTubes to cut down the amount of time that he would think between me asking him questions. Because there have been times on episodes where I've asked him something and it's several seconds of him just going, And he thought that was weird. But what was cool was I got feedback from somebody else. They said that makes it seem so genuine, so real.
Yeah.
And it does. It does. So that's the system 2 thinking that you're talking about.
100%. I mean, when you know that somebody has the ability to think, that's an endearing quality.
Yeah.
Right? Like that draws people in because you're like, oh, they're thoughtful.
Yeah.
Right? When people just fire back at you, right? You're like, did they really think about it? It's like, you hear that term. It's like, are you listening to respond or listening to understand? Right?
Yeah.
And so having the ability to process and think is an amazing trait that I think very little of our population has.
I think they have the ability to think. I believe they don't take the time to.
I also say we don't practice. We practice currently, or at least in social media, VR, you practice ingesting without having to respond appropriately. It's like I can watch a clip, think in my brain very cerebrally, oh, that was amazing. How'd they do that? That was incredible. Nothing has to happen on the outside. 0 things. And if you do that, I mean, say in 30 minutes you go through 50 videos, you just practice like 50 reps, not RPAs, but reps.
Heck yeah.
Of just not responding. But then in a conversation, in a real social setting, you're definitely inspired, or you're like, I need to respond with something. Pull a random thing out, throw it out there. Random quippy line. Adjacent story that kind of has one word to do with something about what you said that I partially heard. And then that's modern conversation a lot of the time, I feel like.
Oh, it's good.
Oh, your grandma passed away? I have a grandma. It's like, yeah.
It's like, exactly. See, one word matched. And that's, I feel like that's how we do it a lot of times nowadays. Where it's like, what is that? That's like almost like Scrabble. But Scrabble on the board definitely, it says words, but it doesn't make any sense. Like it's, so,
it's cool.
You hit me there. Like, the responses and get me today a lot of times. So
processing is good though, right? Like it's really good. Maybe it's a maturity thing. Maybe it's a thing that can be practiced, but I think as I've gotten older, my wife's like, they're just more quiet. And I'm like, I enjoy thinking. Like I enjoy thinking. And it's funny, I had an interaction with my grandfather. He's 87. He speaks like 5 different languages.
Wow.
I personally think he used to be like in intelligence or something, but
too many languages, man.
Too many languages. He used to leave, be in Central America, South America.
That's highly sus.
Highly sus, right? Yeah. Highly sus. And he's like super introverted person to be as brilliant as he is. He's very, very introverted. But I remember growing up, and we would go in the summers back down to LA where we grew up at his house, and he still lives in the same house. It's right in Inglewood. And we would almost think he was asleep. He would sit there like with his eyes closed, right? And he would be processing everything that you said. And we're 14, 15, just so granddad, la, 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 la. You're saying everything. And he would just sit there and consume it all. And then he would go, and that would be the only way that we knew he was awake, right? He would kind of, And it was like he was taking in the information, but he also was like visualizing, almost putting himself in that place of what we were talking about. And then he'd ask you like one question afterwards, right? Like from it. It was very meaningful and like thought provoking, but he would just like consume it. And I was like, he's so weird. Like, is that what happens when you're old? And you're like, eh. And the older I've gotten, the more time that I've spent with him, I'm like, oh, he's brilliant. Because his mind is just working. He's thinking. He's never quick to respond. And that's like a trait that I'm like, I want to have, right? As I grow older, I want people to say, gosh, Jimmie's a guy that if you say something to him, like he's gonna be intentional about the way that he thinks about it, right?
That's a good like unconventional analysis on like what senior people will do.
You think they're not with it.
Because I initially, yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I would hear like they're not with it. They can't hear me. Like, they don't say a whole lot. They've learned that they don't need to, or they've learned the power in the processing. And
Yeah.
Okay.
It's from James, chapter 1. Be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. That's it. That is that is a very wise lesson that not enough people consider. It's really cool that your grandpa's like that. I want to be like that.
Yeah.
I talk too much.
I started probably when I was about 20. I said I have player 1 and player 2 inside. Half the time that I speak, there's a pause because I hear player 1 say something and I'm like, is that good? And usually it's not. And then I'm like, okay, what's the next thing? That one. There you go. I'm trying to figure out why, like you said, like I take my time and think, and I'm like, I think honestly it's a different verse, but it's taking every thought captive, and I still got a lot of bad ones that come up out of here. And yeah.
I think it's just such a revelation, right? The way that you're processing things. I teach on diversity, equity, inclusion stuff all the time, and bias and how people respond, right? And the practical way is exactly what you just said, which is that first person, that impulsive person, that word's going to come up, and the ability for you to say, that's not the right one. And then let that next thought manifest and go, okay, yeah, that's the right
That's
one.
some serious self-control.
Super, super rare level of self-control. But it's something to be sought after, right? Like, it's really, really hard. And I'm just thinking about all the times where I just step in it, right?
Just let it out, man.
I'm like,
let it rumble.
I wish I could pull that back. And that thing is just all the way landed in it, you know?
That's always my goal, though. Well, not to say things to step in, but to bring the secondary thoughts closer and closer into the primary thoughts, so that those come up first and more often. And I don't know how else to practice that except for to think, be quiet, and then say the words.
Yeah.
Which even now, as you guys saw, I read a sentence right here and I still didn't get it out right because I just tried to say it and it didn't happen. But yeah, it's fun, fascinating. Training the brain, which, like you said, you train people on thought and how to think, and
it's a fascinating thing to explore with people because there's a level of being too far in your head where it's actually not good because it kind of freezes you up. It doesn't allow you to be free in the way that you need to be to flow. But I think we could use a lot more of player 2, as you said, right? System 2, that second thought, because those tend to be the ones that are like actually what's in our heart and our belief. I think many times the first thing we say is just of the world. It's our response. It's salacious. It's witty. It's, we're trying to get a laugh. We're uncomfortable. Maybe we're anxious. And so we think it'll change the temperature in the room. Player 2, or that second voice, tends to be more directional and more meaningful. And I think the fear of most people is that, well, that tends to be a heavier thought, or that's going to take us deeper in conversation. And people don't want to do that. We want to be on the surface, right? It's like the iceberg theory I talk about a lot. It's like you see 10% of an iceberg, right? What's above the water, but 90% of it is below. And most of the time I tell people I really don't have many friends anymore or people that I interact with that I'm not in the 90%, right? Most of my business used to live in the 10% above the water, right? Above the surface. Surface talk, everything.
Yeah. It's easy.
Like post-COVID, I was like, no more. And so I want to go deep down into issues with people. I want to know, like, what's really in your heart about this? What's your belief about, you know?
Strong. What did your mother, or who texted you and called you the thought warrior?
Oh yeah, my aunt.
Or aunt,
Yeah.
excuse me. Yeah. Need a lot of that now. Another tenet I have for being quiet as often I do is that the more words I say, or say complacently, will devalue the words I do give out.
Mm.
And it's like, it's like making a bunch of white noise, and I'm trying to put together a good clean track, and you throw all this white noise in there, and it's just hard to hear the good stuff. And it takes sifting, it takes people spending time with people to turn down all the white noise so we can hear the track.
There's a proverb on this, which is, whoever restrains his words has knowledge, and he who has a cool spirit is a man of understanding. Even a fool who keeps silent is considered wise. When he closes his lips, he is deemed intelligent. The more words you put out there, the higher the probability that one of them is stupid. That's kind of the idea. There's a practice to this that I want to get to before we run out of time. Ben Franklin used to carry a list of 13 virtues. He wrote about this in his autobiography. He had a list of 13 virtues that he did not have, but he wanted to practice. And he split them up to one a week, so he would cycle through his list 4 times in a year, 52 weeks. And every week he would practice one of those virtues, and he would track, and he had a table, and he would say, did I do good on this today or not? After reading that, I stole a lot of his virtues. I'm pretty sure this one's stolen from him, but I don't remember. But I made my own list of 13, and I do the same thing. You should practice these things. I am terrible at staying silent. I talk all the time. So one of mine is silence. And this is what I had written about silence. He wrote kind of snippets about all of these. So silence is number 7 on my list of 13 virtues. And what I wrote about it was and this is, by the way, a Denzel Washington quote from American Gangster. The loudest person in the room is the weakest person in the room. That's the quote. Speak as little as possible and listen with intent. People reveal what they want to hear. Do not speak of others behind their back. Do not associate with others who partake in gossip. Always use speech as a way to inform or uplift those around you. That's the practice. And everybody should have those virtues, some virtues like that. But it's interesting we're talking on silence because I can't do it, but I practice it. I want to be like your grandpa so much because there's something beautiful about it, biblical about it.
Yeah. Whew. I think it's about trusting that it's trusting that the idea that you can consume information and not have to necessarily always respond to it is not a measure of your aptitude, but it's actually a measure of your patience, which is a better virtue, right?
I like that.
Because I think we want to evaluate, like, how smart is he? He grasping all this? And actually what you show through patience and, I guess, understanding, being able to think about it, is that you're willing to take it and marinate on it, right? Simmer on it. And then come back with either a thoughtful response or just consume it for what it is. But we don't have to prove that we're smart.
No. That's good, man. And that's where there's some skill set of that you used in the story at the beginning of this podcast. When you walked into that room, you absorbed the information and you were able to distill out of all the information coming in. I'm sure there was a lot of screaming and a lot of weird things happening. You were able to distill exactly how to resolve the situation. You can only do that, I think, if you practice being silent and and really intently listening. So you already do it.
Well, to work, my whole goal has been to be intentional about the things that I do and the interactions that I have. And so I was kind of sitting there in my subconscious, this player 2, right? It's like double dutch, right? Do I jump in? Do I not? I'm waiting to see, like, is this, should I get in there and start skipping around in there? Once I felt like, got up out of the chair, it's like, this is getting elevated. Let me walk in there. I wanted to be present, right, with what was going on. How bad something, I didn't even think, I'm not saying this is like I'm the hero. It's just the lady turned to me and was like, well, are you going to mediate? And I was like, whoa, that's like you said, what you just said, people will say their need, right? They'll explain what they want to hear. It's like she wanted somebody to mediate. And I was like, sure. Not formally trained on mediating, but I've got kids. I've been married almost 18 years.
How bad can it be?
Yeah. You've practiced. Yeah.
What do you want to get out of it? What do you want to get out of it? Great. Yeah, that's awesome. Good.
Yeah, it is.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us on the episode, man. That is time.
Yeah.
This
is awesome.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. We're going to have you back. It's going to be a good time.
Good. Love to.
Yeah.
Tune in anytime. Open book.
Mm-hmm. Just go out the door this way.
We need outro credits.
Just our names on repeat for all the production values.